Thank you very much for having me today. Some of you have had a chance to see some of this material in the past, so it'll be a little bit of a review, but others of you haven't, and so I'm gonna jump right in. I called this talk my Journal of Curiosity, a photo essay of nesting birds, because I use photography a lot to document the things that I'm seeing, as Susan said, out there in the real world. And I've run into a couple of you on the trail. I met Suzanne. I saw that she's on. I saw her and her friend over at Chile Canyon one day. And so anyway, it's really nice to be in the presence of a few people that I have met besides the master naturalists. This first slide that I'm going to show you is kind of a thing that was so much fun for me. This group of young screech owls came out of a cavity right here somewhere in my yard and stayed with me for about 5 weeks. And what I love about doing this exploration with my camera and documenting everything I'm seeing is that it gives me a chance to try to get a little up close and personal to birds, and we get to do that watching them at our feeders and watching them at our water features and things like that. And on occasion we have rare opportunities, like I did with these 3 young birds along with the parent here, to have them visit me and have multiple conversations with them during the month or so that they were in my yard. They inspired me, and they still do. One place where I go, and Bonnie is my mentor here too, is that I do a lot of nest box monitoring, as Susan mentioned. And for the last 4 years, I've been doing that over at Jacob's Well, and then I added some sites here in San Marcos. So it gives me a chance to look at what the behaviors are of these birds, watch them from a distance, and then get up a little up close and personal with them. And I kind of have a rule in this, which is first, do no harm. So that's really important to me, that I keep that in mind when I'm approaching these boxes and I'm watching what's going on out there. And I have made some mistakes, and if you're doing this, and I'm sure a lot of you have done this too, you'll do the same. And I try to keep that where I don't have a huge impact on the birds. But I wanted to share with y'all, and you've seen some of these photographs before, but I'm going to share the different species of birds that I see in nest boxes, because this is where I kind of got my start of looking at nesting. And it's such a great way to see the details and document the cycles and get used to it. And so this is our target species in nest box monitoring. Our nest box placement is the bluebird. And I will have to say, last year at Jacob's Well, we did not have a nesting bluebird in a box. I do have some other places where they did. And this year, since I've been out there all year, I have not even spotted a bluebird in that environment. So it's a bit concerning to me. But when you do have them here, you will see they build this grass nest. You probably have all seen those with the beautiful eggs and the little fledglings to the right. And you'll see this process as I move through these. Feel free to ask any questions you want along the way. One thing I might point out in this picture is the way these nest boxes were mounted. They're on 4x4 posts, which is probably not ideal. They do have a predator control at the bottom, but they also have these knoll guards on the front. At first, I thought I had not seen that when I had started this monitoring. I thought that might be a bit of an impediment to them, but it hasn't been. And it's kind of like a staging perch for them as they approach their own nest. And I kind of like being able to take their pictures there. And I'm always looking at a distance before I approach these boxes and see what's going on there. I try to take any photographs from a distance to see what kind of behaviors are going on. This titmouse, and you'll notice I labeled it as a black-crested titmouse. I know there's been a lot of discussion lately about hybrid and tufted, and if it's got a black crest, I call it a black-crested titmouse. So I'm not real sure that they all are, but that's what I call one. This one I watched going back and forth many times, gathering moss, and you'll notice their nests are moss-based, and they will put in some fur and line the top of that with fur. They can also put some other things in there, artificial materials, anything soft they'll get. And I know the talent dancers are on, and you guys had some that were actually collecting fur straight off of the foxes that come into your yard. So these little birds are great to watch. On the nest, I mean on the eggs here, I don't know if you can see it real well, but there is a piece of snake skin, and that's the reason I picked this picture. These birds almost always put in snake skin into their box. Also, Buick's wrens and Carolina wrens and Astrodis flycatchers will do the same. And I don't know, maybe somebody here knows more about that than I do, but in my observations, a lot of times these little titmice will stay on the nest when you open the box, and they will jump at you and strike you like they are a snake, and they will hiss. And sometimes I wonder if they try to mimic a snake to keep predators away. But anyway, when they're on the nest and they don't leave, I usually just close the box and go on. But when they do, then you can get the picture. I use my cell phone to take these in-nest pictures. And over the little nestlings in this picture, again, just a little warning, these guys are ready to fledge. So it's really, I'm very careful. If I open a box, I usually know what stage they're going to be in, and I'll open it very gently and carefully. And in this case, I took a real quick picture. I'm glad I got it because I just love these little guys, and they're so cute. And they remind me of little pixies. This is a Buick's wren. They usually make their nest with all of this juniper leaves, dead ones, and sticks, and it's usually pretty fine as far as the texture of it. They will line their nest also with feathers, and you can see the eggs. One thing to point out here is notice the eggs have kind of a little circular halo. So that's one sure sign there that you've got a Buick's, and then over to the right, the little fledglings. Very, very careful opening this box as well, because they're ready to go. And you don't want to flush these little birds before they're ready. That's something you have to be very careful about. The parents might not be ready either. Astrodis flycatchers use our boxes as well. They usually nest in more of the juniper oak areas. And these two birds, I had a great day taking pictures of these two birds building this nest. They were so beautiful and interacted a lot together, and it was just an awesome thing to watch. And they will layer the foundation of their nest with juniper strips and put almost a full lining of pelt on top of that of fur, and you can see their eggs and their little babies in this picture as well. Carolina chickadees also occupy our boxes. This is one of the parents. I don't know how to distinguish sexes, but she was on this nest when I opened the box, and I tried to take her picture a few times, and she finally let me, but she was fussing at me the whole time. Their nests are very small, really. They put in a lot of moss, and they're very similar to a titmouse in the way their nest is, except it's not quite as wide in diameter, and it's deeper. And you can see that she built this on top of a little bit of a Buick's Wren foundation down there, and then the little fledglings over on the right. Again, very careful to take that picture. Until this year, I had not had a Carolina Wren nesting in a box at Jacob's Well. And right now, last weekend, Susan Evans and I, she came out and walked the boxes with me, and I removed that nest in box 2. It was packed to the top. I could not put a camera in that box, nor did I try. I could put my fingers down there gently and see the egg, or feel the eggs. There were 5 eggs in this box, and the eggs to the right came from a different time that I had been able to take the pictures. But I watched this little wren feeding chicks for 2 weeks. And finally, on the last, I didn't even attempt to open it. She was very fussy at me all the time. This is an actual picture of the wren. And I was watching her take caterpillars in, and she would just poke her head in and didn't go all the way in. So I thought, wow, this box is probably, the babies might be right at the edge. So I thought, I'm just going to go up there. And I went up and I stared in that hole for just a few minutes. And finally, I saw this little fledgling, and I just put my cell phone camera up there, and best I could took a picture of it. So last weekend when Susan came out with me, I removed this nest completely, cleaned the box. And this weekend on Saturday morning when I went back, it was completely full again, almost to the top. And there were 2 eggs inside. And the 6 days had passed since we were there the previous Sunday. So they're really fast, and I figured this bird really preferred this site, had lots of food, and again, it's the first time I've had a Carolina Wren nest out there. And I also have one nesting over in Shuley Canyon in a box. So kind of fun to see. Finally, this is the last thing I wanted to show on nest boxes. Until last year, I had never had a house sparrow in a box out there, and I wonder if this has impacted our bluebirds, but they're an invasive species to the boxes. They will, and Bonnie can tell you all kinds of things about this as well. They will kill both adults and babies in the box to take over. And so I had it happen twice last year in the boxes. In my best bluebird boxes for habitat out there, I had a house sparrow, which I immediately removed the nest and the eggs. But it may have had some impact. I do not know. So anyway, those are the species of birds that I've had out there in the boxes. And if anybody has any questions or anything or comments, I welcome any of that. And you can feel free to put one in the chat as well if you want to. I've got that open, I can see it.
Why do you remove the nest?
That's a great question. Are you talking about with the sparrows or with anything?
With any bird.
Yeah, and Bonnie might have a better answer than I do. She's been doing this a really long time, but what I do each and every time after the nest cycle is done, I remove the nest, I take it out, I take it far enough away that it won't attract any predators to this nest site, and then I will sweep it out with a little brush, and mostly I will try to make sure that there's no, it could be that these birds might have mites or other things that might infect one another. I don't know all of their diseases, but I feel like that's an important aspect, and they will come right back and do it again as quick as you can almost blink. So they seem to have lots of energy for creating a new nest, and the old ones sometimes will have a lot of debris in them. They might have old insects in there, and fecal material and different things. So I just feel like it's a way to give one a better start from the beginning. Question in the chat says, are all the boxes the same design and size? The answer to that is no. In fact, Bonnie has developed a box that she has had approved by the American Bluebird Society And it's a little different from these. Bonnie and I installed 2 of those out at Jacobswell a couple of years ago, and they're being used. And so those are out there as well. And then some of the other boxes will be a little bit different construction. You can get boxes from the Texas Bluebird Society. And there are people in our local area that have those. Bonnie, did you want to comment or make any other comments on boxes?
I just want to say something fast about the house sparrows in boxes. I'm finding that the pipe, the PVC experimental pipe box I have, house sparrows do not go into it. I think it's a 4-inch pipe, which is just big enough for bluebirds. And I guess they don't like that size. But that's something you may keep in mind if you want to build boxes, is to build pipe boxes instead of the square fence post boxes we've been doing.
And they work really well. And, you know, Bonnie, I don't think ash-darted flycatchers can get in there either. I'm just thinking that
probably not.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to keep going. So maybe keep us time. I've got lots of other material here I wanted to talk about. So while I'm out there, what's really been interesting to me is the opportunity to look at other nesting cavities and things that are going on. And the same birds that use these boxes, some of them will also nest in these natural cavities. So I've been documenting those too. And this is a tree on the property at Jacobswell that hosted, while I was watching in different years, 3 different species of birds here: the golden-fronted woodpecker, the ladder-backed woodpecker, and bluebirds. They all used the same hole. They all used this tree. And just at the end of the season last year, this large branch collapsed because this was a dead tree. I brought that. I wanted to see what the inside of these woodpecker holes looked like. So I brought this home, and it's like a cross section of this hole. And it was just interesting to be able to see it from that perspective that I couldn't see by just from the outside. This is another tree on the property at Jacobswell. It has a different story. And in 2018, when I first started really monitoring these areas, I noticed a whole lot of activity around this tree. It's a dead tree on the path. The staff was thinking of taking this tree out. I was like, don't take it out, please leave it. Right at the beginning of March of 2018, or really in February, I was watching chickadees, bluebirds, woodpeckers. They were all going in and out of this hole. The chickadees went in, tried to clean it out, and finally this ladderback family took it over. They might have built it in the first place, so I thought they deserved to have this a chance. But I took this first picture on the left of this male ladderback woodpecker on March the 9th. Every week when I passed this tree, he would either be looking out, or I could stand at the base of this tree, clicking sort of doing a clicking sound like, and he would come out to get his picture made. And so it was a lot of fun to watch this. Finally, around April the 13th, the female was taking food into chicks. I could hear them from my distance. And on April the 22nd, the last picture on the right was the last time I saw them. And I think this is the female, but I would ask you all to comment on that too. I'm pretty sure it's the female, but I'm not 100% sure of it. I did not see any fledglings leave this site. Any thoughts on this picture on the right? Does that look like the female?
I think so.
I think so too.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if they develop the red. I don't know whether the immature develops the red head at a certain point, or whether they're a fledgling with it. I don't know. Anybody know?
Well, let me telling you about this tree. It's an interesting tree. In 2019, again, I always check this tree. I took a picture of it here on the. You can see the hole is right here. That's the main hole, woodpecker hole. And on this particular day, an astrodid flycatcher, and I believe these are astrodid flycatchers. You guys might have a different opinion of that as well, and I'd ask that. The first one that flew in was this one up here. If you look on the tree, if you can see my cursor, and it flew into this, what I call staging perch, and it kind of surveyed the property. And shortly after that, the second bird arrived, this one right here with the food, and it landed down here on this staging perch. And then after it looked around to make sure, I'm supposing that there's nothing threatening going on here, it glided down and went over to the hole, which is here, and fed babies. And I watched these guys doing this through their whole nest cycle. And it was a lot of fun to see them. And this was the next year. So do these look like astrodid flycatchers to y'all? I just want to be sure I've got that right. Also in 2020, last year, this is the only nesting bluebird I saw at Jacob's Well. And it used the same tree. I wanted to just kind of tell you a little story here. I took these first 3 pictures in the same setting. I kind of use a big clump of grass out there as a bird blind, but I was watching these this couple of bluebirds, and they landed in that lower perching branch, that staging perch. And I know Bonnie has taught me that the bluebird male will come and introduce the female to a nesting site and say, "Honey, do you like this one?" And so they sat there for a while, and I sat there for a while watching them. And then the male flew down to the hole and showed off that beautiful blue color that he's got. And he perched there and looked back at the female and said, "You want to join me?" And she did, and they both went in. And, that was a great little series to see. About 5 weeks later, in the middle of June, this was the last picture on the right that I saw them every week, by the way, during that time. And the female is going back to the nest with food. And that was the last time I saw her or them at this site. But they used this same tree. And I watch it every week. It's lost its large limb. I'll go back to the previous slide. This big perching limb at the top is now gone, as well as this, and it's beginning to degrade. And the only thing left is this one down here, this little one. And so I don't know if that'll impact its preference for these birds. But Susan and I saw a chickadee at the very top. There's one more little hole at the top. And you can't see it in this picture, and you can barely see it with your eye. And chickadee was in and out feeding. So there is a nest in there right now, or was. So great opportunities to look at these things while you're out there doing these boxes. And there's so much going on. I usually spend no less than 2 hours walking this property and looking at everything and listening and taking photographs of all the things that I see out there, including all of the creek bed and everything. So it's great. I love doing it. And the boxes just give me a reason to go every week. So I'm going to keep going to keep us on track. I wanted to talk about these hummingbirds. I know Dory's on the call. She's got some. She's got 3 nests, and I do too. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about them. But before I do, I wanted to make just kind of an introductory comment or two. A lot of people have said, "How do you see these nests?" And I will tell you, I have looked for hummingbird nests, and as long as I'm looking for a nest, I never see one. So that's number one. I cannot find one. Okay. And I have had 6 that I know about and have looked at in my yard, but never have I spied one because I was looking for it. A second comment is watch the behaviors of these birds. Stop looking at your bird feeder. Start looking at your property and your habitat and see what these birds are doing. And I'll show you a few pictures of that in just a minute. And the other thing that I want to say is, and I can't remember if I said this earlier, but first, do no harm. I said that earlier. It's the same with these birds. They're very sensitive to our presence. I want to be very respectful of distance when I'm taking photographs of these birds. And so anyway, that a lot of that thought goes into this. But let me hop right in and tell you that the first nest that I had was in 2017 that I saw. And I was sitting on my deck thinking about all of these limbs that hang down, and they're getting in the way of mowing and all the things, sometimes poking you in the eye. And I thought, I need to trim those things up. And I'm sitting there having that very thought, and I see this little hummer over there probing around on ball moss on one of those dead twigs. And I wondered what she was up to. And it wasn't too long after that that I saw the nest there also. My guess is she was gathering spider web to create the part of the nesting material that's used. And I put that out, and Lorraine Geist responded to me and helped me understand a little bit more about what was going on there. You'll see a picture here of the 2 eggs. I'm going to talk about those in a minute, but I only took one in-nest picture. This nest was about 6.5 feet off the ground. It wasn't real accessible to me, and I was so sensitive to and careful, first of all, before taking any pictures. The only picture I ever took like that. And I photographed these birds, I videoed these birds, and it was just so much fun. And the last little fledgling fledged on May 14th, which happened to be Mother's Day. I wasn't paying attention. I had my camera running. I videoed it. Afterwards, I saw the nest was empty, and on the video, she had fledged. So, or he, I say she because I just thought they all look like females to me. But anyway, it was a great experience. And so for the next 2 years, I was looking for these nests. I actually had a second one, by the way, the same year. It was up about 12 feet. I was trying to take a picture of a white-eyed vireo, and that's how I spotted the nest. And it fledged 2 little babies about 5 days after this one. So that's how I spotted those nests, but not because I was looking for them. And I learned a lot about it through this experience. Last year, and then I didn't have any that I could find. In 2018 or 19, saw no hummingbird nests at all. Looked for them everywhere, couldn't see anything. Last year, I was standing out in my yard in the evening on a Friday, and I had let the thistle grow up. I love thistle because it has so many pollinators, and the little finches love it. And so I let the thistle grow, and I saw this little hummer come over and start pulling down out of this dead thistle. And I thought, why would she be doing that? So I thought the only thing she could be doing is using it for nesting. And of course, then she just streamed across the yard, and I couldn't see where she went. And I didn't have my camera. The next morning was Saturday. I sat out on my bench, and I happened to spot her up on this limb, and she was building this nest. And so these pictures here are some of the nesting materials. The top one on the left, she's looking up here, looking for materials. She brings in the lichens. she's collecting spider web here. She takes that spider web and she wraps it around this nest. And I'm going to show you a little video here. Oh, I'm going to have to stop sharing for just a minute and then I'll come back to it. I forgot to share and to optimize my video. Give me just a second. I'm going to stop the share for a minute. I'm going to show you guys this video. This is a video of her doing building nest and bringing in materials. So here she's bringing in some softness, adding to her little nest cup. These nests are so tiny. I'll talk about that in a minute. And this is June now. This is the middle of June. So it's not the first time probably for this bird, or maybe it is, but here she's putting on the spider web. She brought that in. She's wrapping it around this nest. She's going to bring some more in right here. She is now on the other side, putting a little more structure and adherence to that branch. And notice she's kind of kicking inside the nest. She's compressing. And then she brings the lichen and she sticks it right on that sticky spider web. And those lichens, she goes out and collects those. And here's another one, just needs one more right there so she can get it in the place where she wants it. And finally, here she is. I couldn't quite tell what this soft thing is. It's probably a feather, but I'm not sure. And she's going to add one more little piece in here. So that's nest building. Now I'm going to challenge you guys to help me out on a thing here in just a minute, but this, I wanted to show you this picture. This is the context for this. Now my first little hummingbird actually nested on more of this drop down dead stuff, but this one nested on this almost lateral branch, no drop down, right on top of it. And there's something in this picture I want you to notice. There's a pink flower down here. And this branch is right above, previous owners here had put in a hedge of Rose of Sharon. And these flowers are single blooms and it attracts a lot of hummingbird attention. So that may be a clue to the next thing I'm going to show you. But I wanted you to understand the sort of the context and the environment here, because this is important in spotting things. And again, I saw her because she was doing what hummingbirds do when they're building nests, and that helped me see her. So these next two videos, I'm going to show the first one on the left. As I video this, I put out a tripod and I put my camera on it and I just go punch the button on the camera and walk away. This bird never felt threatened by me. She never flushed when I was out there from the nest. So I was really careful but I started looking at the videos and this is what happened here. So it's June the 20th. We're still in that same time frame. Other hummingbirds start coming in and driving her from the nest. And I hope that's not too fast for you to see. Just a few minutes later, this attacker returns, knocks her off the nest again. And then a couple of days later, a male black-chinned hummingbird, an intruder, comes in and knocks her down off the nest again. This happened over and over. This is not the mother here. This is a different hummingbird. At this point, there were babies in this nest. That hummingbird was probing and now she's back, or he, I don't know if it's an immature. And then finally in this video, you can see the sword fight that's going on there. So let me keep going with this story, because during this time frame, this mother had started to feed babies. First feeding that I recorded here in this video was on I believe the first day of hatchlings being in the nest, June 21st. All of those attacks were happening at the same time. and she's feeding these babies. This looks real normal to me, based on other things that I've seen. And so this is exactly what it should look like at that time. She hops in. They will sit on the nest for at least a week while the babies are in there, except when they're gathering food. Here she is again on the third day. This is kind of brief, in my opinion, from what I've seen recently. And she hops in, but it still looks normal. On the fifth day, she starts to feed again, but this is super brief, and it almost looks like it's not working to me. And then finally, on this last day that she fed or attempted to, I do not believe that these babies are responding. So she hops in the nest, and believe it or not, that is the very last time that she sat on this nest. Oh. I was here too. It was on a weekend. I do work, so I get to do more weekend observations than I do weekday. But after she left that one time, that very last time, this is her above the nest, which you can see right here is not focused. She sat up there, and she just looked at this, and in puzzlement, I thought, and I don't know, I'm anxious to hear about what you think, but I suspect that because the other hummingbirds use that flowering shrubbery underneath her so much, that maybe there was some territoriality going on with that, but I don't know.
Betsy, I think you're probably right. The only aggression like that I've seen is when they dive bomb each other at feeders. This was shocking to see, but I think your conjecture that it was a territorial thing because of the heavy feeding at that bush, I can only think that's correct. It's weird.
I have asked around, Bonnie. I have inquired with people that I thought might have expertise, but nobody has given me anything that might have caused that. But
really,
but that's all I can come up with too.
So Betsy,
well, let me keep going.
Betsy, So let me add just the observations I've made on the 3 nests that I have here on my property. So the first one, none of the nests are close to any flowering or nectar sources.
Right.
The first nest is probably about 8 feet, and it's at the edge of the property. So all that one and the second nest is probably about 10 feet high. Both of those nests are a good half acre away from my hummingbird feeders. Now the third nest is actually right outside my window, and this one's probably about 15 feet high, probably about 30 feet away from the hummingbird feeders. But again, there's no flowering nectar or food source like that. And I have not seen that kind of behavior or territorial confrontation. So I suspect your thoughts are like spot on with that location of that.
And that nest was about 12 feet up, just right above that shrubbery. And the shrubbery was in full bloom. So that's all I can think of too. And Dory, I have been watching 3 nests. I have 3, and I'm going to take you guys to that next. This is this year. I walked up to a tree, and I'm going to show it to you next. This is it. This is the tree. I was inspecting this tree. It's one of the worst ones on my property right now as far as it looked, and it was in great condition last year. And it's suffering from whatever we're all suffering from, having them return to normal. And I took this picture for you guys to look at. I just walked up to the tree, but from this distance, I wonder if any of you has any way to spot the nest. And by the way, this is, in my opinion, prime habitat. So don't trim this off. That's my advice on this. If you want hummingbirds to nest where you can see them. So anybody can you see the nest in this picture?
Is it hanging lower center just below that big clump of ball moss?
Yes, that is it. Who was talking?
That would be me.
Let me bring you a little closer so you can get a little more view of it. There's the big ball moss, very appropriate habitat. It's built on kind of an L of a twig. These twigs are no bigger than a pencil. So think about the fragility of that. So there's our nest right there. I saw this on April the 12th. I was out on my driveway looking at this tree on the corner of my driveway, and I just walked up to it. I saw this nest and I thought, maybe it's last year's. And so I got my little 3-step ladder. This is about 7.5 feet up. And I looked in and this is what I saw. So anyway, that is a new nest. And I was just so excited to see that. I want to talk for a minute about taking pictures of nests and things, because I never approach a nest within 20 feet of a nesting hummingbird if the mother is on the nest, because I don't want to flush that bird off. I want to make sure that they're comfortable and that they don't get scared. So I altered my driving pattern out of my garage, and I would always pull over into this little nook by this tree to back out and then go straight out on the driveway out to the street. And I started just backing all the way out of the driveway, which is not too far, but far enough that it's more comfortable to not do that. And I don't have a whole lot of company, and I didn't have a whole lot of activity, so I didn't have to keep people off of it. But I was very careful about that. And I wanted to talk a little bit about this too. This is a really bad picture on the left, but I wanted to show it anyway. I had let these dandelions grow in my yard on purpose. And I had been watching the females pulling this dandelion fluff out over and over again. And I kept trying from my office window here to take a picture. Finally, I got this one. That's what they're doing. They're putting that in the nest. And here is a picture of, I called this bird H1, by the way. This is H1. She's in the nest and she's got her mouth full of this fluff, and she's using that in this nest. Okay. I'm not going to go into more nesting here, but I watched her and have hours and hours and hours of video. I just ran it. I was about 40 feet away from her nest behind my fence. So it was not threatening to her at all. And like I said, I just go out and hit the button, let it run. And if I was working, which I do work from home, I had to just do that in between things that I'm doing for work. Here's just a few facts that you might want to, that maybe you know already, but usually there's 2 eggs. They usually hatch about 2 days apart. In this case, that was the case. They can have 1 to 3 broods in a season. And it says here the eggs are about the size of a coffee bean. That's off of Cornell's website. But think Tic Tac. These are tiny little eggs and they're white. And they look really big in these pictures, but they're not, because the cell phone pictures make them look bigger. They're incubating for a couple of weeks. When they hatch, think of this, they're 1/4 of an inch long, again from Cornell. They're in the nest for 3 weeks, and the mothers feed them every 20 minutes. And I can tell you that holds true for me doing this. Like I say, my videos will run for between 25 and 30 minutes, and I will see them at least once in every video, sometimes twice, feeding. Their diet, as Lorraine told me early on in 2017, tiny insects and nectar, and the mother will gather those and come back and basically regurgitate that into the little babies. I want to show you these pictures. I thought this nest was at about 7 feet, 7.5. I took these pictures very carefully, not to intrude. I was extremely careful, but I thought it's an opportunity to track this, which kind of satisfies my scientific mind a little bit. If you look in this nest, you can see the materials that are used, that they gather. That was 2 days after I took the first picture. 9 days later, and I, by the way, took a picture every day. I never approached this nest. If the mother is on it, I don't want her to leave. But if she's already out, I will very quickly go over, and it's right outside my garage, so it's very accessible. And this was day 1 for B1. And you can see one little eggshell still there, and B2 hasn't hatched yet. A few days later, I've got 2 little babies in there. If you look closely here, I believe the one on the bottom is probably the older one because its little feathers have grown. And if you look real close, you can see their tiny little orange beaks here like a triangle. And they're like 2 little black peanuts in there, and think about 1/4 of an inch. A few days later, they're a week old. By the way, the night before I took this picture, it hailed here at my house. The hail was 2.5 to 3 inches.
Oof.
And I had 2 nests at the time. The hail was at 10:30. I was so tempted to go out, but I didn't sleep all night. At 5 o'clock, I couldn't take it any longer. So I got up with my flashlight, went out there, and I just knew that this nest was so fragile and on such little twigs, it would not be there. And even if it was, the mother would be dead. But I flashed the light from a distance, and the nest is still on the tree, and the mother is in the nest. And I could not believe it. And so was H2 in her nest, which is about 14 feet up. I waited until she was gone, and I didn't linger long to take this picture because I felt like they were so stressed from the night before. I also had the experience of tree trimmers showing up in my yard 3 days earlier, and they were trimming the trees along the power lines. And I called PEC twice, left messages for the arborist. I was not successful in reaching the arborist, never called me back. I talked to the tree trimmers. They gave me the owner. I talked to the owner, and he said, that's okay. We don't have to do it right now. I don't know why they need to trim trees at this time of year, but that would have been in the middle of these babies being fed, and the other ones too. It hailed another morning, by the way, and we somehow survived all of that. These little birds are getting their pin feathers in. Finally, Susan Evans looked at this picture. She said, they look like little hedgehogs, and they did. And again, you guys, I am so respectful. I do not approach this nest. I just thought it was my one opportunity to take these in-nest pictures. I don't linger. Really important not to be disturbing. These are really fragile anyway. And so they're almost 2 weeks old. At this point, it's the first time I get eye contact with a baby. And then I want you to see this video. I know I'm running over time, Susan. I apologize.
No, keep going. I'm sure we all are enjoying it.
These birds, these babies here are just about 2 weeks old. H1 and her babies. Notice she's really looking around while she's feeding. She's really careful, and it's really easy to interrupt this cycle. And they do need to be fed every 20 minutes, and that's really important. This is the last day I took an in-nest photo. After this, I was afraid to approach them like that anymore. And 5 days later, they look like this. Okay, they can barely get in this nest. And H1 was such a good mother. about 5 days earlier, because there's no leaves in this tree, it was a really hot day. The sun was bearing down, and I watched on this video. She came in, she fed, and then she crawled on top of these babies. And I just have a feeling either there was a threat somewhere or she was trying to shield them, because the babies were breathing out of their mouth. It was almost like they were panting. And I felt like she was shading them from the sun, and she got right on top of them, even as big as they were. You guys, this nest, after fledging, I measured the diameter. It's 1 1/8 inches. So that's the size of this nest. This is fledge day. This was Friday. This is a different angle on the nest, but more from the front. I was taking previously from behind. I love this picture for many reasons, but she's now not perching on the edge of the nest, but perching on this little branch to feed these guys. And it's just beautiful. And a few hours later, the older, more dominant, probably bird goes out on that same limb. And within just a few hours, that bird fledged. And I was working from my garage that day because there were surveyors outside, another thing I had to protect from, that were doing my neighbor's yard. And I just did, this nest is kind of on the perimeter of my yard between us. And I just had to make sure that they didn't come over here. After this bird fledged, it's up in the branches. I don't think I would have ever been able to see this if this tree had been leafed out. But here's the mother, and this is very interesting behavior. She comes in, I just want you to see what she does here. She had already fed this baby a couple of times, but she comes in, and after this feeding, watch what she does very carefully. She starts to peck around on this bird. She's pulling feathers. She goes underneath. She's pulling little down feathers out. And I don't quite know why, but I have, again, a theory that perhaps she's trying to get this bird to test more flight, but I don't know. And while that is going on, I thought the B2, little baby 2, was too far behind. I thought maybe that bird would not fledge. So I did put my video camera on, and I walked away, came in the house. I hadn't had any food. And while I was in the house, this little bird got up, tested its wings, and it apparently was looking around, seeing all the things that were going on upstairs. And finally, I just lucky capture that on a video. She goes up, or he lands on this branch up here. And so now I've got both little babies up in the tree, and they're testing their wings. They're so beautiful. And here's the mother coming in to feed this baby. So watch this behavior. So once this feeding is done, again, let's see about getting this little baby to move. I don't know if that's what this is about, but I have a feeling it's about 3:30 in the afternoon, and she's going, we got to get on the move here. You guys got to try some stuff out. I don't know if that's true or not. That's all I could imagine. Here's one other quick little video that was so cute. I couldn't resist it. I'm just running video. I'm not watching this, you guys, till I get the video off and I start looking at it. But this little bird is exploring this branch, licking it, testing it out. I mean, can you imagine? This is all just foreign ground for these little birds. And I watched them for a while, and then I came back out about between 7:30 and 8 o'clock and looked up in this tree, and they're all still there. The little babies are flitting around from branch to branch, trying out their new wings, and it's just a beautiful thing. So you guys, that's the story of H1 and her babies. These are my birds. right now. So H1 fledged her babies on Friday. H2 is about 14 feet up. There's 2 young in that nest as well. That nest is about 70 feet away. Dory, you measured yours and I did too. I was curious. And then on Friday, I noticed one other nest, and it's about 20 feet on the other side, maybe 40 from H1. So these are the 3 mothers. I'll stop there. I have other pictures, but I will ask if you'd like to see those
Yes.
before I go on.
Would everybody like to see them? Yes.
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 I told you.
Betsy,
All right.
are the nests in live oaks? All of them?
Yes, they are. Mm-hmm.
And
they are.
Sorry, have yours all been in live oaks as well?
Yes, they are.
Okay, thanks.
All right. I have a few little pictures I'll run through really fast. Weekend before this past weekend, I was sitting here at my desk and I have views across my yard, and I saw these 3 little Phoebes landed with their parents right over here. And I went outside, and the Phoebes were so cute. Parents were feeding them. They actually let me get closer than I would have expected to take their picture, but it was really cute.
That one needs a caption. Hey, me. me.
Oh, I know it. When we first, sorry, I went too fast here through these little birdies. When we first got on a minute ago, we were talking just in conversation. This is a bird I took a picture of on Friday when I was sitting in my garage. That's the one. I'm wondering if this is an immature hooded oriole. It had a black throat. It was very yellow. There were 2 birds, I think. This was the only one I could get a picture of, which I took straight up into the sky, which is never a good thing.
What do you guys think? We
That
looked
bird right there.
Yes, we looked at all kinds of angles and pictures and thought it looked the most like a hooded oriole. What do you think? Anybody?
Has
Female.
anyone looked at the bullocks?
We
Let me
did.
look it up.
Bullocks has bigger white patches on the wing.
Let's
Let's
see. Yeah, could be.
Yeah, because orchard has
female
black
has-
around the eye.
But not on the throat.
But immature orchard does have black on the throat.
Oh, it does? The immature.
Immature male. But usually the black on the immature male orchard oriole goes up around the eye as well. So
yeah, I saw that in the picture.
as far as this goes, hooded. And where was this taken, did you say?
This is in San Marcos.
Oh.
I live out on West McCarty.
Usually the hooded is a little bit more orangey, even the immature.
Right.
And
I can't guarantee you, Jesse, the coloring here because,
Yeah.
I mean, I was taking it straight into the sky and it was a bright day and I had to tone it down just a little bit just to kind of get what it was, but I don't know about coloration on this one.
But first
anyway,
impression
I wanted
is immature orchard.
Okay, that's absolutely possible. Let me keep going real quick. I saw a few other birds. We were talking about warblers when we first got on. This black-throated green warbler has been in and out of my yard a lot. I had fun photographing it. I had this, of course, you've all had these. The yellow warbler was so pretty. And I had a ton of these little Nashville warblers. I also had last week a female American redstart, and I didn't get it. I haven't processed her picture. And then I had a Wilson's warbler that I had a really bad picture on. But though I don't have a huge volume of warblers, the little blue-gray gnatcatcher is always hard to photograph, but I love to try. And they're just splitting all over the place. And so this is one of my better pictures that I got early in the spring. This is another bird I took a picture of in Shuley Canyon the other day. Jesse and anyone else, I'm curious. I don't know what thrush this is for sure. Bonnie and I had a couple of conversations. She sent me some actual documentation. Anybody have a idea on this one?
I think Swainson's.
What I would say.
That's what Bonnie and I thought.
The I-ring, I don't remember it, but the I-ring is a determining factor there. Jesse, what do you think?
Yeah, usually I'd expect a little bit buffier I-ring on this, but the only other thing to think of would be gray-cheeked, and they don't really have any I-ring to speak of. So I'd say probably if Swainson's hermit thrush would have a red tail. So.
And I took this just a couple of weeks ago. My hermit thrushes are gone in my yard, so I didn't think they would be here, but just real quick, a couple more things. I took this little bluebird. It's the only bluebird I've seen this year. I took it at the cemetery in San Marcos, and I've been watching them out there. We don't have any in nest boxes out there, but
Betsy?
and I took, yeah.
We walked Shuley Canyon on the 1st of May with Stephen Ramirez, and we saw 2 Swainson's thrushes there in Shuley.
Okay, good. That's probably right then. Excellent.
And,
Thank you.
you know, in the last 2 weeks, I've seen a few.
This is a picture I enjoyed taking. I watched this hawk. It was originally on the ground at Jacob's Well. It flew up onto a wire, and then it took a nosedive down to the ground. And I loved the next series of these pictures because you get to see what its flight pattern is. So this is a red-shouldered hawk, and it apparently did not get its prey because it doesn't have any, and this all happened really quick. And then it sort of leveled out. It went from what I thought was like a dive bomber to a stealth bomber. And and then it moved on into the forested area. So I just loved that. And quite honestly, I hear them out there all the time, and I rarely see one. So that was kind of fun. This is a little kinglet in my yard, finch in my yard. And my other little prize that I loved this year was I had this black-throated gray warbler all winter long. And I don't think it was supposed to be here, but it was here until the freeze that we had. And I haven't seen it since. And the first time I saw it was in November. And finally, I think this is a sharp-shinned hawk that landed in my yard. At first, I thought it was a Cooper's, but it had the tiniest little body and spindly little legs, and that made me think sharp-shinned hawk. And it took a shower just for a long, long time in my water sprinkler. Finally, I'd never seen one of these on my property, a golden crown kinglet.
Golden crown. Yay.
Nice.
And I saw this one on my property last year. I can't remember the date of it. I had put in a little pollinator garden last year. I love the hummers flying around in that. I also left the sunflowers in my yard, and oh my gosh, these common sunflowers, this one was about 12 feet tall, and these little finches just loved it. They ate everything off of it. And finally, I have a lot of yellow-billed cuckoos in my yard.
Great photo.
I love them too.
That's such a great
So I've got one more shot, and then I'm going to hand off the meeting. I'm so sorry it took so long. But these were my little screech owls. I got so accustomed to them, and I could almost individualize them, which is always so much fun to do. And anyway, this little one over here on the right, I thought it was a female. I'm sure it's, who knows. But one morning it came in at 6:30 in the morning, landed right here on a branch about a foot from my window, and just looked in and checked on me. And all the time, even during the day, I was actually working outside a lot, painting my fence, and I could hear their little beautiful kind of purring trill, not the whinny, but and even during the day, I've wanted them back, but I haven't seen one since. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you. They were wonderful.
Thanks, Betsy.